Thank you to everyone for joining us today for our webinar for Supplier Community, how influencers are filling voids in shopper marketing and successfully driving sales. Big topic, and we're joined today by Aliza Freud of SheSpeaks, as well as Audrey McClelland of Mom Generations and Brandi Riley of Mama Knows It All. Supplier Community connects you with the experts, and we're delighted to have these experts today. Aliza, the mic is yours.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Josh. And I am so excited to be on today's webinar and kind of hopefully playing the role of host here to an awesome panel of influencers who we have joining us today. As Josh mentioned, we have Brandi Riley from Mama Knows It All and Audrey McClelland from Mom Generations, who are both joining us. And what we thought we could do today was talk about this topic of, in an age where we are, even prior to COVID and people having stay-at-home orders, and that really kind of having an impact on how we advertise and market to shoppers, we had been seeing the power of the awesome content and of course the audience that influencers have and that they've built. So what we wanted to do today is instead of just kind of having us present all of this, all of these various case studies of us kind of presenting them out to the audience, we wanted to have the influencers join us who are really in the thick of it, that understand. Both of the influencers we have today, both Audrey and Brandi, have been doing this for a long time, and in a long time in the influencer space, obviously is probably a bunch of years. So both Brandi and Audrey have been doing this for a while and have terrific reputations and have worked with some amazing brands and have an amazing audience of followers. So we wanted to bring it to life with both Brandi and Audrey. So what I'm going to do first is kind of quickly say, for those who are not familiar, we actually launched as a research platform back in 2008, and fast forward to where we are today. We work with a lot of brands to really help them understand women and to tap into the power of women's voices and the audiences that female influencers have built. We work with a lot of different companies to do that, and through our amazing community. We are nothing without our amazing community of influencers who help us do that. They work with us to create the content and then amplify and distribute that content in front of the right audiences. So that's a little bit about us. And then what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how the content from influencers is being used as creative, just as, because we are now in an age where creative could be expensive. So it's maybe not necessarily something that is is always within budget to be creating. Another thing that's happened is, of course, that with COVID, going to an expensive shoot or having a shoot where you have to travel and have people on set is not as much of an option as it has been in the past. So we're going to talk about how influencers are really kind of filling that void on the creative side for brands. And then we're going to talk about how influencers are also being viewed as media, basically their own like media channels. And we'll talk about that. And then how that content is also being used in paid media, paid social, programmatic. So we'll have some examples of that. And then finally, we'll talk about, of course, the all-important, how does it impact sales, and how can you ensure that if you are creating a piece of content with influencers, that you can take it sort of over the finish line and into sales. So that's kind of our agenda. And really what we're going to do is focus on examples, like bringing this to life for you all in examples. I have these amazing panelists joining me today. Brandi Riley and Audrey McClelland, and I'm going to start by I'll start with Brandi. Can you just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about who you are and also how you got started in this space?
Yeah, so hi, good morning, everybody. I am Brandi Riley. I am a blogger at mamaknowsitall.com. I started blogging a little over 10 years ago just to kind of share my parenting story. I was a single mom at the time and wanted a place where I could put all my emotions, where I thought people might care. Well, it turned out people did care, and also I could earn money from it. So very early on, I learned about blogging for income and started working with a shopper marketing agency and then other brands. And from there, it's just been really a blessing on my life to be able to do this work. I also run Courage to Earn, which is a community of over 6,000 influencers. So these are other bloggers and digital entrepreneurs, folks who are making money by telling stories, working with brands, or selling products.
Awesome. Yeah. And Brandi, we have an example in the deck as we go through where we'll talk a little bit more about Courage to Earn. One of the things I want to point out is both Brandi and Audrey, in addition to what they do in terms of as an individual influencer and creating content and working with brands and agencies to create content for their audience and having awesome followings, they also both run really successful side groups of other entrepreneurs and other women, and I think mostly female entrepreneurs, and we're going to learn more about that as well today. So thank you. Great to have you, Brandi. Audrey, do you want to introduce yourself and talk also about how you got started?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me today. Hi, everybody. I started Mom Generations actually June 2008, 12 years ago. I started on my son's birthday, June 17th. So I always know when to actually celebrate. And much like Brandi, I felt like I really wanted to be able to share. I actually jumped into the waters of blogging way back in 2005 and 2006 with another blog called Pinks and Blues. And it was apparent to me back then that there was an amazing power in the connecting of moms, being able to share, feel open, feel comfortable, get really that mom to mom perspective that I just was getting on forums. But at that time, social media was just about to grow. And so I loved being able to really just jump into the waters really back then. And, because social media changes I feel like month, I kind of always joke about that, but really jumped into going full steam on my blog in 2008. I rebranded to Mom Generations. Over the course of the years, I've had 5 children. And I really just loved being able to document our journey, our experiences, and really connect with brands and companies that were looking to connect with the voice of mom in a very authentic, real, and honest way. And so really it became our family business. My husband actually had abdominal cancer in 2012, and right about then I became I became truly the sole provider of our family through our blog. And it happened the way that it happens, but I think that also motivated me to really be able to jump into the waters, as you had mentioned, and just kind of start also Permission to Hustle, which I know you had mentioned, in terms of really kind of creating a group for women that were looking to start a hustle, is why we started it. I started with my business partner, Vera Sweeney. And so, yes, I have my Mom Generations blog that I've done now for 12 years. But yes, we also have the Permission to Hustle, which was geared toward hopefully motivating and inspire whatever that hustle might be in any shape or form, to just go out there and do it. Because I think a lot of us started with that hustle and with that grit and determination and devotion to something. And so that really, is, I've been a full-time influencer now all these years, and I love it. There's no other place I'd rather be.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I love that. What I love about both you and Brandi, Audrey, is that I think you guys are influencers in the sense that you've built such an amazing audience of followers who are there for to follow your life stories and understanding what's happening with you because they're interested in that. But in addition, you've also both sort of risen to the occasion and created groups of women who are similar to you, who are looking to grow what they're doing and to do it better. And you guys have become a resource for them to do that. And I love that. I think it's, there's certainly a wonderful element of giving back in doing that. And also, I think makes both of you very practical in terms of understanding as a brand what people people are, what the brand is looking to do. I think that really does, kind of come through in how you guys think about the work that you do for brands. So I want to talk a little bit with each of you about how you think about your audience. So, you both have built a great audience of people across different platforms, and we're going to talk about the platforms in a minute. But first, can you guys each talk a little bit about how you think about your audience, who they are, what they're looking for from you in terms of the content you're creating? So maybe, Brandi, we could start with you.
Yeah, so in terms of my audience, I think about them as real people. I think a lot of times we hear you need to think about the character who is buying products from you, or the character who is looking at your blog. And instead, I think about my audience as real people and put myself in their shoes. So what is something that I would be interested in looking at realistically, not like from a textbook definition of what can sell or what can make people interested. And then I write from that perspective. Although I do create content that is personal and that is about my life, I do think about what is somebody going to get from it who isn't actually me. So I try to write from a first person perspective with the third person in mind.
Yeah. Awesome. Audrey?
Yeah, I think much like you said, many of our audiences have really grown with us. When I started, I had, just I was pregnant, and now, I have a son. He's going see how quickly time goes by. He's going to be a sophomore. He is in high school. And, those are kind of like the pinch me moments to think about how, we have really catered to. I have one follower who we miscarried together in 2007. And we've seen each other now go on to I had 3 more babies and she had another one. So when I'm thinking of my audience, I'm not only thinking of maybe who has grown with me throughout this journey, but I'm also thinking about, what do I have to offer that is going to hopefully, I kind of feel like my blog is all about hopefully entertaining and hopefully giving a solution to a problem. I really love to talk about fashion, and I love to talk about beauty, and I love to talk about what it's like to have many children. And so I'm hoping that when I'm connecting with my audience, I always keep those things in mind, because and I know Brandi's the same way. When we talk about things we're passionate about on our blogs, we know that the audience that we're going to connect with, that's what we want them to see. We're not just talking about things just as talking heads. So when I am thinking about my audience, I am very much thinking about what hopefully will they take away from this. And on top of that, what hopefully will they learn from this, or how can it make their lives easier?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think about the emotions behind it also, like what does a mom feel when she's going through whatever situation it is that I'm writing about, whether it's summer camp or whether it's trying to conceive, from even simple type things like keeping your house clean, that comes with a lot of emotions, and it comes with a lot of feelings for moms. So I really try to address that. And I think my audience looks for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that that's one of the things one of the principles that we think about when we are looking to partner with influencers, and I think that everyone should be thinking about when they look to partner with influencers, is authenticity. And I think the fact that you guys are so focused and understanding of your audience and who they are, because you guys interact with them every day, right? You're creating content, you're interacting with them on a day-to-day basis. You guys have such a strong understanding of who they are and what is going to resonate with them. I think that's one of the things that is so powerful when you work with an influencer, obviously with an influencer, of course, who understands their audience and what and the fact that they bring that authenticity to the table. So I'm glad that you guys could articulate a little bit about the audience. I'm now curious if you guys could talk a little bit about how you think about the different platforms. Do you have different followers on the different platforms? Are they different? How can you talk a little bit? You don't have to talk about all of these platforms. I just, I think we just wanted to put up the ones that, we hear a lot about right now. But can you guys talk a little bit about how you think different platforms and the audience and the content, the audience on those platforms and the content you might create on those platforms?
I I wish all my platforms had the same audience. I really do, but they just don't. All of my platforms have different demographics of folks. And I think it just because they came about at different points. And Audrey, you probably agree with this. Like when we first started, Instagram didn't exist. As a matter of fact, I don't even think Facebook pages existed.
No, you're right.
And groups didn't exist for sure. And so as I kind of grew in my blog and my children started to grow and my interests changed, I started picking up audiences on these different platforms that were interested in things not necessarily on my site or not necessarily on another platform. So when I do any sort of sponsored campaigns, or even when I'm sharing my own content, I think about like, where is the best place for this? I even use LinkedIn to promote content depending on, what it is and whether it'll make sense over there.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point, Brandi. In fact, I know that we are working with you on a project for a client with Prudential, and I know that you've used LinkedIn in the past to support that project. So I think we were remiss in not putting LinkedIn on here. Obviously, a different audience there, but and maybe what you will talk about or how you will talk about things will be different there. But great insight. So it sounds like for you, you have different audiences on the different platforms, and you think about the content you create there based on the audience that's there. Audrey, what about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's different audiences on each different platform. And the way, even I'm just looking at the slide right now, but I feel like when I'm doing something just in terms of content, I feel like on Facebook, still for me in particular, it's so rich for moms. I feel like, most moms are on Facebook. Most moms are on Instagram as well. Seems to be, and I always kind of use as a gauge my friends who are not bloggers. And I love to ask them, like, some of them are teachers, some of them are stay-at-home moms, some of them, and the last thing they want to do is talk about blogging and WordPress and all that. So when I talked about social media, they seem to be on Instagram and Facebook. And so when I'm creating my content, I really do kind of keep that in the back of my mind. YouTube, I just feel like, it's like a virtual playground. I really never can gauge. I'm always surprised. I always thought it skewed younger. And then when you dive into the analytics, one thing I would suggest is, when you're going to work with an influencer, maybe ask them for their demographics. We all have access to it. We all can give you the keys to our castle in terms of, this is who I'm targeted for. And on YouTube in particular, I think that's a great one because I thought I was younger, but I really do hit a certain age group, which is more moms, which I was very surprised at. Snapchat, I'm going to be totally honest, I'm only on because I have teenage sons. And it's like more, just mom keeping up tabs on. And TikTok, I feel is something we all need to watch because it's exploding now. And I feel like if you're not on TikTok in some capacity, even just to sign up, it's something that's really, I think brands and companies are going to be looking at quite a bit. We all knew it was young a couple of years ago, and now it's amazing to see a rich community of moms on there together. So I think if COVID did anything over the last few months for social media, I'm sure TikTok's smiling because I know a lot of new people, myself included, putting myself in there, definitely got into the waters.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, certainly I think brands are dipping their toes into the waters. And we're actually working on a campaign right now that has a TikTok component for a chocolate brand. So definitely seeing, a really good response there in terms of if you work with the right people to create that message for you. Okay, so now we're going to dig into the content a little bit and how you think about content. So there's two examples on here. One is for Brandi on your blog. This was a campaign that you worked on for Hershey's, I believe. Those are Hershey Kisses there. And I'm curious, so that campaign was about trying to build awareness about a Hershey's product that was available. It was a seasonal item for Valentine's Day. And you took up the idea of Galentine's Day, which is, I believe it's the day before, or maybe the day after Valentine's Day. And it's a day where you celebrate your girlfriends. So can you talk a little bit about how you came up with this idea and what you did here?
Yeah. So this was Valentine's Day. And again, thinking about my audience, I know that my audience doesn't come to me for super intricate cake boards and charcuterie boards and all that. Like, they come to me for basic, simple things that they can actually do. And so vision boards is something that I do anyway. It's something that I do with my friends, and coming together for like a simple activity and snacks. That, I do that all the time. So that's why I decided to do a vision board party where everything you can get from the grocery store, with the chocolate as the kind of like the star of the show, and bring some magazines and just bring people together. Whenever I do a campaign, a sponsored campaign, I like to think about, what would somebody actually do? I really love looking at the content that's really just beautiful and over the top. But I know that if I really want people to click and buy, or to look for this product at the store, it needs to be something that they could vision themselves actually executing. And so while I'm very proud of this, I know that there are people who would take those chocolates and build statues and beautiful things out of it. But I really like to come at it from a more realistic approach. And I have to say, like, people like my mother-in-law, ladies at church, folks who I know aren't on like the creative spectrum, they actually went out to look for these things because they were like, oh, I can see this in my house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that you, given your knowledge of your audience and this idea of your girlfriends and kind of bringing them together for something, and sort of featuring the brand inside of that, is again going back to that thing we were talking about before with authenticity, and something that works well for your audience and resonates. So, Audrey, do you want to talk a little bit about this example here you have for BJ's?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things when we're creating content, one thing that I like to do is, when I'm working with brands, I'm very open to questions that I get specifically from readers, or things that, I'm asked all the time on different social media channels. I know I don't have 100 kids, but for some reason, even just having 5 kids, people think it's like 100. So, which I always feel bad, people that have like 8 kids or 9, I'm like, literally, I know I have half of what you have. But one thing I get across the board, and maybe because I have 4 sons that are teenagers now, but, what's your grocery bill like? What exactly do you get in a weekly shop? Like, what do? Do you take them all? And so I love when I talk to BJ's Wholesale Club in particular, that they're open to, when I'm creating content for them, me coming to the table with stuff that questions I'm getting from readers, and them being open enough to allow me to create content that's going to answer those questions. Because much like, Brandi said, I could have done a gorgeous stylized photo of me in front of BJ's with a gorgeous sundress and a hat. I could have done something like that. We all could. But the reality is, I'm usually sweating through my tank top. I'm usually carrying my daughter. They're usually fighting. The fact that they all stopped just to take a photo, I can't believe it. There's stuff always coming out of the cart. And so that was truly, I was happy that BJ's just allows me to do what I know is normal for us. And, that is something that when we're thinking about content and we're working with different brands and companies, that I love that they allow us the freedom to come to them with ideas, because you know what, that is the real life. This is the authentic piece of really who we are as people. So, this particular content was, and then along with it as well, it led to a blog post, which was my weekly shopping list and how long it does take us. Because you know what, I get it. Sometimes it is, a kind of a funny thing to ask someone, but it's my life and I don't mind sharing it with you. So, but, going back to the content piece is much like Brandi said, just being very honest and open. And, this is who we are. And this is the kind of content that we know is going to get more engagement because it's truthful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. I mean, I think it just goes back to the idea. So if a brand is working with an influencer, really kind of leveraging what the influencer understands about their audience and understands about how to convey their life and how the product fits in or the service fits into their life for that brand, because that's going to be the content that resonates.
I think we see a lot of times offers for campaigns that sound amazing. There used to be this trend of taking food that was already made and turning it into something else, like turn this pizza into something else, or turn, waffles into something amazing. And, it looks good on Instagram, but at this point, people aren't even clicking that type of stuff anymore. They want to know, like, what kind of syrup do you use when you put your, like, the only thing I can do is take my frozen waffles and put them in the toaster. What kind of syrup are you using? Just tell me that. Don't make a birthday cake with it, you know? And also thinking about the long tail results. So something like a shopping list, like what Audrey would put, people are going to come back to that over and over and over again. That's going to still be trendy down the line. A vision board every year that comes up, Valentine's Day and a vision board every year, that's going to be something that people come back to. So even after the company has moved past and the check is cleared for the influencer, that content is still going to be there performing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And, now thinking about, another example here, because you guys have a couple of others that I wanted to kind of quickly touch on. This one, I know, Brandi, is one that you did for a camp that your daughter, I believe, is attending. Can you kind of quickly talk about this one?
Yeah, so the camp is an online tech camp. It's a little more expensive than anything that I normally share on my site. But what we were able to do is push the timeline back so that my daughter could participate in it, and I could actually have real content to say, this is worth the price. And it really was. It was a 2-week camp. It was 3 hours a day. She was totally involved and active in it, and it got her to see tech differently and to engage in it differently. And I'm totally sold. So when it comes back around, I would definitely pay the price. I definitely feel confident telling my audience, this is something you should check out, even though it's a little on the high side. But, being able to experience it and then share my authentic feelings and results of the actual program was super helpful. And I have people even now still messaging me about, how did Ava like it? Should we sign up? There's another one starting soon. So people are still asking about it.
Awesome. Yeah. And so another example here on how, we have people like you guys creating content that is being used as creative. This is, Audrey, this is an example, obviously, from you. Sorry that your face is frozen is in exactly that spot. But the idea here was that this is a campaign for Philips. And what they were trying to do was basically get your video content as they were, that's what they wanted. They needed the asset. They couldn't go do a shoot. This was being done during COVID, and a expensive shoot where people had to go travel to get to it was just not feasible. So instead, they decided to work with an influencer to create this content that talked about the product. So can you just, I know that you really, this product was something that really resonated with you. So maybe you could talk a little bit about how that came into play for this one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's, you kind of set it up, but I think that's a great point to make too for even any brands that are out there watching right now is that, I know that you guys had put this up, that this was a potential opportunity, and I immediately connected with it on many levels. And it's an epilator, and I have always had a lot of arm hair, a lot of facial hair. And, as soon as I saw that you guys had talked about this and, hey, we're looking for an influencer who's going to be doing a video, I love that you took my response immediately, because I really went personal with you. And I feel like that's such a great connection too, when brands can find someone that's going to take the time to really give a personal story, a personal connection. It's not just, Audrey just using it. It was really being able to say, this is always been an issue for me. It's always been something I'm self-conscious about. And I'm always looking for the best products to use on myself. So when you guys had me create this video, it just made sense. And it also, on top of that, you allowed me as well to, like you said, to shoot in my home. It was, very seamless to do. And even though my face is frozen like this, there was a smile there, but I did enjoy it, and I was able to do, and I think that content as creative, when you're doing a step-by-step or a tutorial, video works so well because you can see, and I know we've talked about this before online, many of us, but, we're not actors, we're not we don't have a teleprompter in front of us. We are not, we are using something in a video. We're showing the before, the during, the after, and this creative worked well because it is one of those, items that does deserve a actual tutorial and a video tutorial. I couldn't write this out. You need to show somebody. They need to see it. They need to see my reaction when I put it on my skin. And these are all things as content that I'm thinking about. If it hurts, I wanted to be able to say, ooh, it pinches at first. If it doesn't, I wanted to be able to say that. And I love that you guys gave me the ability to do that. And I think that when we're creating content as creative, either a video or not, maybe it's a series of photos, it is so helpful to be able to really just show an exact process and again, we keep going back to it, but the authenticity piece, I guess you can't say it enough. I mean, and that's why I guess we are saying it so much, but it was really easy to create this content.
Yeah, and I think that that's the point too, is that you get the best creative, you get the best engagement, you get the best impact when you find the person, the influencer who really does have a connection that can tell the story about the product and importantly has the audience that you want to get that product in front of, right? It's like those things kind of coming together is where that magic happens in terms of, finding the right person who has the right audience and can create that message that comes across very authentically about how the product works in their life. So the next example that I'm going to show is just one that I'm hoping that it'll play. It's kind of a short, I'm not sure that'll come through on the screen. So if it doesn't, I'll kind of move through it quickly, but this is a campaign that was done on behalf of Gillette for one of the shaving products, the Venus shaving product. And that example was really trying to get through to a millennial mom. And the reason we wanted to show the example is because it is very much another example of a wonderful piece of creative that then was able to drive a direct link to sales. So I'm going to switch here and see if it'll
soft
work.
Bunny. The bunny's furry. Bunny's furry like a bunny. Might be time to shave your legs. You've got to show up to win. Make it to the shower, whatever it takes. No, too ambitious. You've got to focus. Let's talk strategy. Ankles only yoga pants shave, up to the knee rear pedicure shave, or doctor's office going for it shave. Whatever you decide, choose your weapon wisely and get ready for battle. It's not how many times you fail. It's how many times you get back in the shower. While the Venus razor cannot babysit your children, it can give you a flawless shave. You did it. And don't let a shaved leg go to waste. Feel my leg. Thanks. And put back on your mom pants. You accomplished a lot today.
So one of the reasons that we wanted to quickly show that example is it's a great piece of creative that was used and organically pushed out by the influencers. It received a lot of views, which is great. But in addition, we had at the very end of the video, as well as in the description, as you can see in the bottom here, we had a link where people could go click on it to go directly to purchase product. And that's one of the other things is when we think about a piece of content, if you have a goal of driving not just awareness, but also specifically trying to drive sales, you can do that with a great piece of creative that is organically pushed from a media standpoint. You can also put paid behind it, but in addition, really ensuring that you have that call to action to drive people to the audience, to the item online to purchase, and then all of that, is obviously can be trackable. So just a quick example. The next thing that we wanted to talk about. So we've talked about creative. We now want to talk about media a little bit. And Brandi, we have an example here from you on the left of a campaign you worked on where you did the post, and then that post actually had some paid media behind it. Do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so this was a campaign that had a couple different components to it. There was a blog post, Facebook and Instagram that had ads behind it. And it was really interesting because very frequently I have posts that have ads where the brand will pay for ads. And unfortunately, they will not choose the right audience. And it'll get a ton of engagement. It'll get a lot of likes. It'll have a lot of comments that are unrelated to the content. But with this, they did a really good job of finding the folks who would really engage with it in an organic way. So although the numbers may be a little bit smaller than just, let's put, I've had campaigns where they put $15,000 behind, a picture, and you have tons of likes and comments, but it doesn't do anything for sales. With this, again, it was a smaller portion of folks who were able to see it, but they were very targeted, and people who actually would inbox me and talk to me about being an entrepreneur, or talk to me about, whether or not their Office Depot had a mail center or not.
Yeah, and one of the other things I want to mention is, and when we talked about the blog post earlier, one of the things that you can do as a brand is to provide the influencer with a pixel that gets embedded into the URL, and from there you can have that population for retargeting, the people who see that post and have read that post. But in addition, you can create lookalike populations that are then you can and have. We know that a lot of brands have been doing this very successfully, creating that lookalike population and really putting paid behind ads against that lookalike population. So it sounds like in this example, Brandi, you created the post was well received, and then the brand was able to put some paid behind it in order to ensure that got amplified and boosted into a larger audience than just the audience that may have seen it on your Instagram account.
Absolutely. And something to keep in mind is that as influencers, we spend so much time creating great content, but as soon as we put that hashtag ad on there or hashtag sponsored, we're automatically going to be pushed down from in the algorithm. Not as many people are going to see it. And that's not a myth. Like, it's actual, it happens. So, being able to know that you're going to budget something for ad spend is so helpful for us, and feeling like we are really partners and you understand how this all works.
Yeah, and I love this example because also it speaks to the audience that you have that are entrepreneurs, right? Because the small business audience. So I'm not going to go through this other example here on the right just because of time, but I would love, Audrey, if you could talk a little bit about this. This was a campaign that was done for Rubbermaid, and one of the things that's been a challenge I know for a lot of brands is, of course, not being able to be in store and doing demos, right? Like going into a store and getting a sample of something or getting a demo of how that product works. So there's been this shift where I know a lot of brands are thinking about how do we use some of the live platforms like Instagram Live or Facebook Live to create more of like a virtual demo. So and in that sense too, you're creating you're creating this content, right? It's being broadcast live, and then you can also put boosting behind this one. So can you talk a little bit about this Rubbermaid example here?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that's a great point. I know we all have to be creative right now. Obviously, the brands need to be creative right now, and also influencers need to be creative right now. Many of us as well are thinking of ideas and pitching brands and companies what we can do for them. And much like you said, a lot of, there's a lot of like virtual demos that go on. And right now, that just can't happen. So we had done this Facebook Live, Vera and I, with Rubbermaid a couple years ago. And what we loved about it was showing an actual demo, in real time. And that's the beauty of live, is that what's going to happen is going to happen. So you can, answer questions as you go. You can talk through what you're doing as you go. And the beauty of influencers too is that, there's so many of us out there, and Brandi included, when I say this, is that we are encouraging bloggers to show brands that we can do live video, we can do news segments for you. We are more than just people who can just type and take photos. And that is, an asset to brands and companies out there. And, as influencers, I think that what we can do is show that we can do stuff live and that you can trust us with your message. Because I know that a lot of the times brands get nervous. Well, this is our message and we don't know who's going to show up. It's live. And what we're saying is, that's okay, because we love your product and we believe in it enough that we can be there and we can answer the tough questions, or we could be there to moderate them and let somebody else of the brand take over them. And so, yeah, this one was a lot of fun to do with Vera. And we did 3 salads. We worked through them as we went. We laughed, we joked, because really the great thing about this one is that they wanted to have that fun girlfriend vibe. And we were able to do that. If you want to do one with your family, you have someone, working through a meal at dinner time, or maybe it's breakfast, or whatever the case may be, you can do a virtual demo for almost any brand. And so, yeah, I think this is an exceptional way to do it. It cuts costs completely. You have your own studio in your home. Majority of bloggers have a ring light. I have one right behind me. We are very resourceful. And I really hope that brands and companies realize that, is that we are our own businesses, and we are very professional, and you can rely on us and trust us when you have something that you want to do live. And so, yeah, we had a lot of fun with this, but it is a really great avenue to take if it's something that your brand is looking into.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, I think it's a really good point too, Audrey, and thinking about how both you and Brandi are very good. You're very articulate, and there's a very easy way that brands can check that, right? If a brand, to your point, brands should be able to look at what you've done, your body of work before this, and say, okay, I get that you get it. And I trust that you're going to create a great piece of content, and you understand your audience, and you're going to help my product come to life for your audience. And I think that's a huge piece of value that influencers bring to the table for brands. I'm going to kind of quickly, because we're running short on time, I'm going to just kind of very quickly say this was a campaign for, this was specifically targeting to create content that was in Spanish and in English. It was a campaign for Finnish to really try to help raise awareness about the product in the Hispanic community in the U.S. The influencers that were worked with here, from micro to mid to celebrity, kind of all work to create an authentic piece of content for them around Finnish. And one of the things that we saw with this campaign was just fantastic engagement rates across the board. But, and I think that goes to the value of having an influencer help create the story on your behalf if they have the right target audience. And this example here, Ana Marie Lopez is an actress, and she's also a spokesperson. She's on the Univision equivalent of the Today Show and the morning show. She's a host of that. And she created a piece of content that had over a 20% engagement rate, which is kind of unbelievable for celebrity content. Usually you see something more in the 1% range for engagement, especially for a sponsored piece of content. And of course, this had to be very clearly marked as sponsored. So it was just a really strong example of, if you work with the right influencers to participate in creating that, in creating the assets that tell the story, it can do phenomenally well. And, the media, I'm not going to show the example because we don't have a ton of time, but what the brand ended up doing was, because the content performed well, they ended up creating ad units out of it. And then that was used for media, and that media performed really well. If anyone is interested, I will be happy to, we'll share this out and you can see those examples after. But I want to move on to the last component, which is sales, because I want to have just a quick couple of minutes for us to be able to take some questions in case, I know people are on the line listening. So I want to be able to have some time for that. So Brandi and Audrey, if you guys could each, maybe Brandi, you can talk about this example where I believe this was for Purdue, and you created content that had a direct link to sales. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this was a campaign with Purdue Farms that was paid, but also I'm an affiliate for Purdue. So being able to make income on the back end, that's something I think that brands should always look at. I know that offering affiliate sales feels like that should be enough, but they can use this video and put ads behind it and promote it and things like that. So you're actually paying for the content to be created. And then down the line, like I was saying earlier, there's still going to be a long tail result and benefit for the brand. But I can still be able to benefit from that. So this was an unboxing. Like I am a basic mom. You're not going to see, 2-hour braised chicken. Like if it can't be done in 30 minutes, I'm not making it, but being able to go and as I'm going through, share with my audience. And I actually recorded this and then premiered it live so I could be there and answer questions. And I did a watch party later again on my personal channel with my family and friends. So really tried to hit all of my markets with this on Facebook. But yeah, having that link there, being able to see how many sales I was generating for the company, and then them being able to look and say, oh, wow, she actually was able to move units. It just helps us to see that this is a good partnership. This was a good fit.
Yeah, I love that. Again, going back to that authenticity factor, we kind of keep coming back to it, but really making sure that the product, the way you're talking about it, the way that you're engaging with your audience on is authentic to who you are, because otherwise it's going to ring false. And that's, in this day and age, not at all where you want to be. So, okay, Audrey, this is from I believe this is one of your Facebook groups. Can you talk a little bit about this in terms of how this group and how you think about, sales related to this?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really going to piggyback off what Brandi just said about affiliates. I think that I'm just going to echo what she said. I think it's such a great asset for brands and companies to really utilize that affiliate, because all it can do is just not only incentivize an influencer to really work harder, because they know that there's going to be an extra incentive for them in it, but it's also a really smart thing for them to do. I mean, it's just something that I love. I have this particular fashion group. And even as an aside, I think as influencers, it's our responsibility to let brands and companies know what else we do. And so many of our friends have so many different niche Facebook groups that I think would work perfectly to really drive sales for different campaigns. I have a fashion one, and I also have a hair one. I know that there are just so many other ones that are out there that, when I'm working on a potential fashion or beauty campaign, I know that I can go to that brand with a niche Facebook group and say, hey, listen, I also have 1,500 women here that are very plugged in. It's a very highly engaged group because these women really love fashion and beauty. A lot of women have hyper-local Facebook groups. So these are all really great avenues as well to help drive sales in different ways right on Facebook, because these groups are out there. So I think it's just another thing to add into when you're looking at influencers. What else could they potentially do to help you? But through affiliates, we're also really helping ourselves, because we're driving sales and we're also getting a commission on it.
Yeah. Well, and what I love too is this idea of Facebook groups, just the power that can have also for brands in terms of looking to work with influencers who have these groups. And I know you both have very active Facebook groups that you have built and nurtured. And there's a lot of value in that in terms of what brands can, how brands can leverage that. So I'm glad we're we're getting the chance to chat about that. Just very quickly, I know we are actually we've got about 9 minutes left, and I want to make sure we have some time for questions. Josh, do we want to take some questions? Are there questions, or should we keep kind of going through the content?
Go ahead and keep going through the content. We don't have any questions yet, but if any of the people in our audience have questions, there's a great messenger chat feature here in GoToMeeting, and you can type your questions into that, and I'll be happy to read them to our panel here. We do have 2 comments. One comes from Jennifer, and it says, "That's such a great message. The content we create is there for audiences even after the initial campaign, and that's valuable for brands." Another comment from Joy, "Great information. When there is connection, the impact is greater." So she agrees with you 100%. Oh, and we do have one question now.
Okay.
This comes from Emily. "How do you balance content messaging requests from brands with what you know works with your audience?"
It's a great question. Brandi or Audrey, do you guys have a perspective on that? How you balance what the message request is from the brand with what you know about your audience and kind of finding that equilibrium?
Yeah, at this point, I've been at it for so long that I feel comfortable pushing back and just saying, I really want you to succeed. Like, I want this campaign to go well. Please trust me. This is what's going to work. And, I don't have any bad feelings about walking away if it's not going to resonate with my audience. I've built up such a reputation to be honest and truthful with folks that if it's too salesy at this point, I just have to walk away. Or if it's something that I know that my audience is not going to connect with and it's just going to flop, I just think that that's kind of, ethically, it's my responsibility to say to the brand, I don't think this is a good idea. I'm probably not the best fit for this project.
Got it. Yeah. And I love that idea that, because you are true to your audience, because you understand that that's, ultimately what makes everything kind of all work together, being true to them and creating content that works for them is part of how you think about what you do. Audrey, anything you would add to that?
No, I 100% agree with Brandi. And I feel like, again, it's not easy for a lot of us to turn down campaigns. It wouldn't be easy for someone to turn down their dream job. But if it doesn't align with what is going to work for you, then you have to. I mean, if it's unfortunately, what we're doing is passion, is meaningful to us. So we just can't, you can't talk about everything. So if the message doesn't work and there's no way you can I know we were chatting before. I said, I used to have 4 sons before I had my daughter. Anything that came across me that was remotely, maybe geared towards daughters and moms with girls, it just didn't make sense unless it was, something that, yearning for a daughter, which I don't know why a brand would do that, but it just didn't fit in with what my experiences were. So how could I expect anybody to take me serious? So no, everything Brandi said, I echo 100%.
Yeah, great. I know we've got about 5 minutes. Are there other questions, Josh, that have come up while we've been chatting?
Yeah, several. So Sari asks, how did you get connected with brands initially?
Brandi or Audrey, do you guys want to talk about that? I know that part of the opportunities probably come to you from companies that you might be working with, like, we might bring opportunities to you guys to connect with brands, but other ways that you guys connect with brands or agencies?
I'm a big pitcher. I love to pitch. I know Brandi's the same way. I'll give her, she can obviously respond to this as well. But I mean, I love to still pitch. I also think that there's something really, it's still good to go to maybe Twitter or Instagram DM. I also encourage people to maybe list out 50 dream brands I'd love to work with, and then maybe go and try to, press releases are all online. You can find just through Google, you could do a press release for a company or a brand. I also know that, I know I'm this way. I know Brandi's this way. You can also ask people for contacts. I think that the one thing that about what Brandi and I love about our community is that when you find women who are open to sharing, you hold on to those women. And if there are brands or someone that you really want to connect with, I encourage you to ask people, because I think you'd be surprised. You'll find out, as long as, you do it in a very respectful way, this person, it's not just kind of out of the blue, like, what can you do for me? I think that as women, we know if you're a hard worker and you really are looking to advance in this space as an influencer, you're going to find a lot of women are there to help, because nobody was really there for us when we started this. Brandi and I we're in that kind of like trailblazer path where there weren't many women before us that we could turn to. So we take this responsibility very seriously. So I would encourage you to do that.
Great. So, Josh, I know we only have a couple more minutes. Is there another question or two that you feel like we can cover now?
There's three more. How do you come up with your ideas versus recycling what we've all seen over and over again the last few years?
So I want to say, I don't think there's anything wrong with recycling what we've seen over and over again. I mean, I am a parenting influencer. There are new moms being born every single day, quite frankly, people just want to hear the same thing over and over again in different voices. Like, I have watched a million videos on how to ice a cake. I have watched a million videos and read a million recipes on how to make boiled eggs, honestly. You know what I mean? So I think that we get caught in trying to be so innovative with information that we can kind of alienate our audiences, where they just want to know the basics 99% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Great point.
Okay. So Tomika asks, this has been very informative. How do you suggest that creators add their authentic voice to campaigns?
I think, you know what, and I know Tomika, so, I'll disclose that. But you know what, I think that, it's one of those things where if you're going to work with the brands, I really would hope that they would allow you to take your personal voice and run with it. And I know that, there's so many opportunities out there where, you are given the messaging, and this is what really needs to be hit in with what you're supposed to be talking about, whether it's a blog post or Instagram or a video or wherever. And, I think too, much like I know, Brandi, you had mentioned before, being able to speak up and be able to say to a brand or a company, hey, listen, I love this, but, how can I put more of a personal spin into this? Because this is what's going to resonate more with my audience. But I really do. I think that it is just as important for us to fight for that piece of it, because that's just as important as the messaging we're going to be conveying, because it's going to be, we're storytellers. And that's what we need to do, is tell a story around the messaging that they want us to. And if it works, which hopefully it will, a brand shouldn't have a problem with that, I would think.
Yeah.
Stephanie asks, sometimes brands ask for in-store content. How do you approach that content so that it is interesting, engaging, and true to your?
I just think approach it like you are shopping. I think, again, with just keep it simple. Instagram stories is a great tool to use for something like a shopping trip. I love watching people just walk down the aisles. And I used to be opposed to these in-store pictures until I saw products that I'm a big consumer. I will buy anything. Until I saw products people were promoting on Instagram or Facebook, and I got into the store and I didn't know where to find it. And it ended up being somewhere where I never expected it. So I say, with like the in-store products shots, just don't try to be innovative. I would say to the brands, I don't think it makes sense in a blog post necessarily, but utilizing something that's live, like Instagram stories or Facebook Live, or even an Instagram live video, something like that would be super beneficial to your audience, to show them where the product is. I don't think you have to try to be creative. Like, you don't have to do, a mob dance or anything like that. Just shop and show people where things are.
Two more questions. Patricia asks, great content, open and genuine. Thank you. Do you each offer something like media kits that help address engagement costs for brands, or is it customized?
I know that I'm a very big proponent of this, but I think you should have your media kit very easily accessible for anybody to get right on your blog. I feel like, you don't want somebody digging for it. I feel like they just give up if they couldn't find it. And then in terms of pricing, and I don't know if Brandi, you're different, but I know I like to kind of have ballparks, but really be able to talk with a brand one-on-one. Because I'm going to be honest with you, and my husband's an entrepreneur. I grew up the daughter of entrepreneurs, small business Rhode Island. I know my dad never had a budget to pay somebody $10,000, but my dad would have a budget to pay somebody maybe 100, 150. And that is something that I think is important to think about as well, is that we know that sometimes you're dealing with really big brands, and then there are small businesses which, they just don't have the ability to do it, but you can cater to something and you can make something work if it will work for you. So I'm always really apprehensive about putting my price points right there, because I never know. I don't think it's one size fits all. I think that there are so many different components to campaigns and businesses and structures that you need to have open dialogue with somebody.
This is the last one.
Okay.
What if a manufacturer like me has a very specific niche? How do I find women influencers who can work with my product and speak to my mostly male audience? That's from Carlson.
So is the assumption, just so we are clear, so I'm guessing there the assumption is that the audience you're trying to reach is female in this case, or is it because you're looking for female influencers? I don't know if we get clarification, but I mean, I would just say that, if the goal is to find, how do you find the right influencers, you can start by doing a Google search. You can look for people who write about topics that are related to you. You can also just do a Google search for influencers of a particular type, if that's what's interesting to you. So if you're not, if you want to try to do this kind of homegrown, on your own, you can go and start doing that research. There are really some phenomenal, articles out there that are very easily accessible, that have been kind of keeping up to date on who can write about which topics, or who are influencers who create content around different topics. But what you need to just make sure is that whoever your target audience is, whichever influencers you decide to work with, you should be looking to make sure that your audience is their audience. And that's one of the things that it seems like a very simple thing to think about, but it's not just that the influencer might be your target demographic, it's that their audience is. And both Brandi and Audrey mentioned this, they have access to lots of information about their audience. So they can tell you by platform, who is their audience. So I'd say that is like the number one thing, is making sure that whoever you decide you're going to work with, that you check to make sure that target audience that you're looking to reach is that influencer's target audience. So I hope that helps.
Carlson did clarify that they're trying to reach a male audience, but also said, "Great answer, thank you." So there we go. That's all of our questions there.
And I know we went over. So thank you so much for giving us a few more minutes. We appreciate it. And I want to thank Audrey and Brandi for being with us today. It's a real treat to have you guys participate. You guys are just so well respected within the industry as influencers, but also by, your peers. Other influencers kind of view you guys as the people who kind of know what they're doing. And I really appreciate that you guys took the time to be with us today. And thank you to Supplier Community for allowing us to bring the information to your audience.
Awesome.
Yes, we want to say thank you to Aliza and Audrey and Brandi for joining us. Very great webinar, lots of great information. And we want to thank everyone out in our audience for joining us today and making these webinars a success. It's been a great pleasure to bring them to you. For more information on our speakers or the material covered here today, please visit our website, supplier.community. Signing off.